Hey, my sweet little sugar cousins, welcome right back to the couch, and pull those blankets up because tonight, family, tonight the tea is scalding, and I do mean scalding. It's your girl signing on again with the loudest whispers in the culture, and before I even take my first breath, let me say every single syllable of what you're about to hear tonight is alleged, reportedly, supposedly, whispered, murmured, and rumored, so keep your lawyers in the drawer and your popcorn on your lap. Because tonight the industry is smoking, Cardi B is out here allegedly running a full-scale reputation demolition squad with Nicki Minaj riding shotgun, the target being Maduka Okoye's baby mama, and the receipts are apparently landing like grenades. Meanwhile, Bia is out here breaking Spotify like the internet forgot she was on a shoestring budget, and Doja Cat and Latto are climbing the iTunes ladder faster than most people scroll past them. Buckle in, cousins, because this one has layers, and by the time we finish, you are going to understand exactly why Cardi B might be about to have the messiest summer of her entire career. Reportedly. Supposedly. Whispered on the wire. Let's start with the Bia detonation, because family, this one is beautiful. On July 20th, Bia's track Whole Lotta Money quietly, without a marketing team, without a label push, without a single glossy magazine cover, became the highest streaming solo female rap song of the day on Spotify with 747,000 streams in a 24-hour window. 747,000. That song has now crossed the 70 million streams mark, and I want you to sit with that number for a second, because Bia is doing this on what industry insiders are calling a skeleton budget. No promo run. No press circuit. No radio muscle. No label campaign. And yet Bia keeps climbing. Bia keeps trending. Bia keeps outperforming rappers with 10 times the marketing dollars behind them. Which brings me directly to the elephant in the room, and the elephant's name is Cardi B. Because Cardi B, in the middle of all of this, decided to open her mouth on a live stream and challenge fans to name 5 Bia songs, waving a finger like she was hosting a game show and threatening imaginary bullets at anyone who could not answer. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I say ridiculous because Cardi B's entire sophomore album, the one that took nearly 7 years to arrive, cannot pull the daily numbers that one Bia single is pulling right now. Not one track from Cardi B's project is currently trending. Not one has gone platinum in the year since the release. Not one is showing the organic muscle Bia is showing without lifting a finger. So when Cardi B, of all people, tries to belittle Bia's catalog, what she is really doing is projecting, and cousins, projection is a very loud sound when the microphone is on. Bia has the talent. Bia has the pen. Bia has the delivery. What Bia does not have is a machine, and if Bia ever gets a real machine behind her, I promise you, half of the industry is going to be in trouble. That is not a compliment, that is a warning shot. Whispered on the wire. Reportedly. Now let's shift to Latto and Doja Cat, because their collaboration climbed 20 spots on the US iTunes all-genre chart in a single stretch, landing at number 159, which is respectable enough to acknowledge, but nowhere near the "she is not flopping" fantasy Latto's inner circle keeps trying to sell. And listen, I love a beautiful visual, and the video they dropped was cinematic, it was styled, it was choreographed, but pretty pictures do not print Billboard debuts, family. So the question that is sitting in the back of my throat is this: will this track actually crack the top 50 of the Billboard Hot 100, or will it settle into the 70 through 90 graveyard where so many of Latto's recent singles have quietly gone to rest? Because let's not gaslight ourselves, cousins. Latto has been flopping. Latto has been flopping in a way her team keeps trying to publicly dress up in couture. And there is nothing wrong with an artist going through a cold season, every rapper does, even the greats. But you do not get to flop and then simultaneously look down your nose at everyone else who is currently outperforming you. That is the part that turns me all the way off. Drop your verdict below. Is Doja and Latto's new one making the top 50, or is it another well-shot near miss? I want to see the numbers your gut is telling you. Sit with me on this. But now, cousins, let's move to the real reason all of us clicked tonight, and it is Cardi B, because Cardi B is having a summer she is not going to be able to spin. First up, Blake Griffith. Blake Griffith has systematically, week by week, made Cardi B look like a woman who was fed a script by a man who was not writing about her. Blake did not just throw an accusation into the wind. Blake dropped receipts. Blake sat in an interview chair and calmly, articulately, one line at a time, dismantled the narrative Cardi B has been trying to sell about Stefon Diggs being deeply in love with her, obsessed with her, choosing her over everyone. And what Chris Blake is essentially telling the world, family, is that Stefon Diggs was never actually into Cardi B the way Cardi B has publicly claimed. He is saying it was a temporary arrangement. He is saying the affection was performative. He is saying the shopping sprees Cardi B kept posting were not romantic, they were transactional exchanges with a woman who happened to be in the picture at a convenient moment. And here is the part that broke the internet in half, cousins. Chris Blake sat there and said, in essence, that Stefon Diggs treated him, Chris Blake, with a level of financial attention that far exceeded whatever Stefon Diggs spent on Cardi B. If those receipts hold water, and only Chris Blake and Stefon Diggs know for sure, then Cardi B's entire public narrative about being the chosen one is collapsing in real time. Reportedly. Supposedly. Whispered on the wire. And listen, Chris Blake also went out of his way, to publicly clarify his own sexual identity, saying on the record that he identifies as heterosexual and has never had a physical or romantic relationship with a man. He was direct. He was calm. He said, and I am paraphrasing, that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that people can interpret those pictures however they choose, but that he personally does not consider the connection he had with Stefon Diggs to have been a romantic relationship. He described walking through luxury stores and letting Stefon Diggs handle every bill, saying he essentially felt like one of the girls in the room, meaning he did not concern himself with what anything cost because someone else was covering it. That is a direct quote-adjacent paraphrase, cousins, and it is a nuclear statement, because what Chris Blake is telling us in the plainest language possible is that whatever Stefon Diggs was doing, he was doing willingly, generously, and consistently. Chris Blake also spoke about writing his son's name on his own nails, saying that he does it because his eldest is named Milo Blake, and he wants to carry his boy's name on his hands, and that anyone who wants to interpret that as feminine or as a signal of anything else is projecting their own assumptions onto him. He said, at the end of the day, he lives his life, he pays his own bills, and he does what he wants to do, and that is the beginning and the end of it. I have to be honest, cousins, that is a mature answer. That is a grown man answer. And that is not the answer Cardi B was hoping the internet would receive. Because here is the collision, family. Cardi B was publicly dating Stefon Diggs. Cardi B publicly had a child with Stefon Diggs. Cardi B publicly played the role of the ride or die. But Cardi B, if you read between the lines of what Chris Blake is now saying, was maybe never actually in a real romantic partnership. Maybe she was in a photo op. Maybe she was in a business arrangement disguised as romance. Maybe she was in a mutually beneficial visibility deal that ended the second the visibility stopped generating value. And I say maybe, cousins, because I am not the one holding those receipts, but Chris Blake is, and Chris Blake is talking. Chris Blake is talking a lot. And every time Chris Blake talks, Cardi B loses more of the sympathy she has been aggressively hoarding. Drop your verdict below. Do you believe Chris Blake or do you believe Cardi B? I want to hear it in the comments. Now let me pivot, cousins, because the story gets deeper, and it gets a whole lot messier. After Cardi B was spotted repeatedly with Maduka Okoye, described in the culture chatter as the deadbeat freshman, Maduka'S baby mama took to social media and unloaded. She said Maduka had been abusive. She said Maduka had walked out on his own child. She said Maduka was, in her exact language, an all-around trash human being. She said he was not even performing in the bedroom, family, and she said it with the specificity of a woman who was tired of holding her tongue. That is a serious set of allegations, and any reasonable person watching from the sidelines would say the appropriate response is silence, prayer, and lawyers. But that is not what happened. What happened, allegedly, is that Cardi B, who could not stand the optics of her new man being publicly branded as a woman beater, allegedly picked up the phone, called her closest ally in the industry, and asked for a favor. And that closest ally, cousins, was Nicki Minaj. Reportedly. Supposedly. Whispered on the wire. Because reportedly, Nicki Minaj, the woman Cardi B has publicly feuded with for years, the woman Cardi B has clashed with at Fashion Week, the woman Cardi B has thrown shoes at metaphorically and literally, is now allegedly in Cardi B's damage control corner, and I want you to sit with how strange that alliance is. It is like watching two fires shake hands. But according to the whispers in the culture, Nicki Minaj began pushing out content, allegedly AI-generated content, aimed at painting Maduka Okoye's baby mama as unhinged, jealous, crashing out, and lying for attention. She posted, and I am paraphrasing what circulated online, that it is very irresponsible to fabricate messages when there are real victims. Let me pause right there, family. Let me stop the tape. Because whichever public figure supposedly typed that sentence needs to open a mirror and look inside it very carefully. Because the real victims, the ones with genuine grievances, the ones with genuine documentation, the ones with genuine trauma, do not need volunteer defense squads showing up to police the language of another woman who is trying to protect her child. The real victims exist in the shadow of the very industry Cardi B and her allies have been standing at the top of, and Cardi B has publicly, on tape, admitted to drugging and robbing men in her past life. That is not speculation, cousins. That is her own confession, on video, in her own voice. So when the same Cardi B tries to lecture Maduka Okoye's baby mama about real victims, the cognitive dissonance is loud enough to shake the mirror off the wall. Now here is where I want to be crystal clear, cousins, because I am not the kind of storyteller who pretends I have lived a perfect life. I have been broke. I have been low. I have had days where the fridge was as empty as the wallet. But I have never, not once, not in the darkest hour of my life, thought about lacing somebody's drink, robbing them of their belongings, and walking out of the room with what wasn't mine. That is a specific choice. That is a specific character. And when a person publicly admits to that character on camera, they do not get to then position themselves as the arbiter of who is a real victim and who is not. That is what we in the culture call audacity, and Cardi B's audacity has always been her loudest instrument. Sit with me on this. Let me tell you why I think Cardi B keeps attacking the victims of others while carrying victims of her own. Number 1, a guilty conscience is a whisper that never sleeps. Number 2, it is in her nature. It is in her strategy. It is in her survival instinct. Because see, Cardi B has spent years positioning herself as the constant recipient of harassment from what she has publicly called the pink community, and she has framed every critic as either a hater or a homophobe, or a rival plant. But here is the trick, family, the moment the water she throws splashes back into her own eyes, she reaches for her wig, she reaches for Nicki Minaj, and she reaches for the exact same defense squad she has spent years pretending doesn't exist. That is not the behavior of a woman confident in her own truth. That is the behavior of a woman who knows the tape and knows the receipts and knows the timeline. Reportedly. I honestly cannot believe Nicki Minaj shared that repost like it was a smoking gun, cousins. Even if Cardi B and Maduka'S baby mama's ex have been separated for years, family, a mother is still going to want the father of her child home. That is not desperation. That is not delusion. That is the biology of parenthood. And it is a feeling Cardi B should recognize herself, because ever since the divorce from Offset was made public, her own house has been anything but stable. Her babies have been raised in the shadow of a father who has been in and out of headlines, and I do not know who is holding the fort down over there, Mary Poppins, Nanny McPhee, a rotating cast of assistants, but let us not sit here and pretend that a deadbeat dad is a normal outcome for a household. It is not. It should not be normalized. And any woman who has ever fought to keep her family stitched together deserves the room to speak, deserves the room to grieve, and deserves the room to expose whatever needs exposing. Drop your verdict below. Whispered on the wire. Now let me address the AI-generated content situation, because this is the part that made my jaw drop the furthest. Reportedly, and I want to keep emphasizing that word, cousins, because I am not the one making the claim, I am simply relaying what the culture has been saying. Nicki Minaj posted synthetic content, AI-generated content, designed to make Maduka Okoye's baby mama look like a jealous woman crashing out from the sidelines. This is a serious escalation of the game, family. Because we are no longer in an era where a diss track or a tweet is the weapon. We are now in an era where entire fake voices, entire fake statements, entire fake behaviors can be manufactured overnight and dropped into the timeline as if they were real. And when a woman with the reach of Nicki Minaj, a woman with tens of millions of followers, a woman whose platform can bury or resurrect a person in an afternoon, allegedly uses that reach to weaponize AI-generated content against an ordinary woman defending her child, family, that is not just messy. That is dangerous. That is a moral line. That is a legal question. And it is a question the industry is going to have to answer sooner rather than later. Cardi B, listen to me carefully, because I am speaking with love here. You cannot keep doing this. You cannot keep publicly aligning yourself with men whose track records read like federal case files, and then be shocked when the baby mamas of those men take to the internet with their receipts. This is a pattern in your life now, and patterns are not accidents. Patterns are choices. Stefon Diggs came with multiple women, multiple children, multiple entanglements, and the entire timeline of the culture warned you to walk away. You did not walk. You dug in. You posted. You performed. You paraded. And how did it end, cousins? It ended exactly the way the culture told her it would end. Publicly. Painfully. And with Chris Blake sitting in an interview chair explaining, one calm sentence at a time, exactly how she was never the queen she thought she was. And now, cousins, Maduka Okoye is next in the rotation, and it is the same movie with a new lead actor. Maduka has a baby mama he has been entangled with since 2020. Maduka has children. Maduka has, according to his baby mama's own social media, a history that would make any sensible woman put her phone down and walk in the opposite direction. But Cardi B is not walking. Cardi B is booking flights. Cardi B is booking Italian dinners. Cardi B is booking public sightings. And Cardi B is allegedly coordinating with Nicki Minaj to preempt the fallout before the fallout can even finish loading. Family, if Cardi B ends up pregnant by Maduka Okoye, and I say if, because we are not the ones with the calendar, that is a level of chaos even the culture will not be able to metabolize. That is when the seatbelt light comes on. That is when the plane hits turbulence. Reportedly. Let's talk about Maduka Okoye's baby mama for a second, because she deserves the floor. Have you actually looked at her, cousins? Because that woman is naturally, effortlessly, God-given fine. And I am not talking about surgical fine. I am not talking about post-op fine. I am not talking about the kind of fine that requires monthly maintenance. I am talking about a woman who wakes up in the morning and looks like a photograph. And I promise you, family, that is a huge part of why the retaliation has been so vicious. Because Cardi B, for all her bravado, for all her chart records, for all her Grammys, is a woman deeply, deeply insecure about being outshined by a woman with a natural glow. It happened with Stefon Diggs' other baby mamas at the Super Bowl. It happened with the way Cardi B moved through her own marriage. It is happening again now. And each time it happens, Cardi B responds not with grace, not with silence, not with self-reflection, but with a phone call to her defense squad. Sit with me on this. Here is the part that cracks me up, though, cousins. If the roles were flipped, if it were Cardi B being smeared with AI-generated content, if it were Cardi B being publicly branded as a jealous crash-out, Cardi B would burn the entire internet to the ground. Cardi B would go live for 6 hours straight. Cardi B would name names. Cardi B would threaten violence. Cardi B would drag every last one of us into the mud with her. But because it is not her, because it is somebody else's mother, somebody else's daughter, somebody else's woman, the empathy simply is not there. The empathy has never been there. And that is a character trait, family. That is not a personality quirk. Reportedly. Now let me ask you the question I think every single one of us should be asking. Why is Cardi B so obsessed with toxic men? Why is Cardi B repeatedly, over and over again, choosing men who come with receipts that would make an entire courtroom stand up? There are good men out there, cousins. There are men who show up. There are men who love loudly. There are men who do not have baby mamas plural. There are men who do not lift a hand to a woman. But Cardi B, with the entire buffet of the world's most eligible partners at her disposal, keeps reaching for the same dish and expecting it to taste different. That is the definition of a self-inflicted pattern. And every time she reaches, she asks the culture to swallow her choices as if we were the ones who made them. We were not. She was. Whispered on the wire. If Cardi B was going to end up with a man with baby mama drama that will never leave, then explain to me, family, explain to me, why she left Offset. Offset had less drama. Offset had less noise. Offset had less legal exposure. Offset had less woman-beater energy circling him. And yet Cardi B chose to blow up her own household, chose to publicly divorce, chose to launch into a rebound with an NFL player who came pre-packaged with more baggage than an airport carousel, and now, having exhausted that plotline, has moved on to Maduka Okoye, who comes with even more. Maduka is baggage, cousins. Maduka is not a man Cardi B is going to marry. Maduka is not a man Cardi B is going to build a legacy with. Maduka is a station on a long, long line, and Cardi B is running out of stations. Reportedly. But here is the thing that stings the most, cousins, and I want you to hear me on this. The moment Cardi B decided to attack Maduka Okoye's baby mama through the mouth of Nicki Minaj, she confirmed for the entire culture the one truth she has been trying hardest to hide: she is afraid of that woman. She is afraid of what that woman knows. She is afraid of what that woman looks like. She is afraid of what that woman represents. Because if you were not afraid, family, you would not be organizing an AI-generated smear operation. You would be sitting at home, minding your business, letting the truth do its work. But Cardi B does not sit. Cardi B does not mind. Cardi B does not wait. Cardi B mobilizes, and every mobilization is a confession. Drop your verdict below. Chris Blake, coming back around to him, cousins, is not slowing down. Chris Blake is calm. Chris Blake is measured. Chris Blake is dropping information the way a chess player drops pieces, one at a time, on the exact square where it does the most damage. And what Chris Blake is essentially saying about Stefon Diggs, that Stefon Diggs was spending on him, that Stefon Diggs was paying his bills, that Stefon Diggs was making him feel like the one in the room, is a direct contradiction of every narrative Cardi B built about being the loved-up girlfriend. Because Cardi B publicly showed us the shopping trips. Cardi B publicly showed us the trips. Cardi B publicly showed us the diamonds. Cardi B publicly showed us the pregnancy. What Cardi B did not show us was the parallel timeline in which Stefon Diggs was allegedly showing the same energy, and possibly more energy, to Chris Blake. If both stories are true, family, then Stefon Diggs was not choosing Cardi B, Stefon Diggs was distributing. And distribution, cousins, is not romance. Distribution is inventory management. Reportedly. Supposedly. Whispered on the wire. Now I want to take you into what I think is the deeper cultural pattern here, because we are not just watching a celebrity relationship crumble. We are watching a manufactured public narrative collapse under the weight of ordinary human testimony. Cardi B built her career on being the loudest voice in every room. And for years, that strategy worked, because the loudest voice usually gets the microphone. But the internet has grown. The internet has receipts. The internet has archives. The internet has AI detection tools that can flag synthetic content. The internet has a memory Cardi B is not going to be able to outrun. And so when Cardi B tries to bury Maduka Okoye's baby mama, when Cardi B tries to discredit Chris Blake, when Cardi B tries to reframe Stefon Diggs' exit, she is running into a wall, the wall of a culture that has finally started to fact-check her in real time. Bia, in the middle of all of this, is doing what real artists do, she is quietly outworking the noise. Bia is not tweeting about Cardi B, Bia is not going live about Cardi B, Bia is not filing lawsuits about Cardi B, Bia is releasing music, watching the streams climb, and letting her catalog make the argument for her. And I promise you, cousins, that is the loudest response any artist can give, the response of numbers. Because at the end of the day, Cardi B can call Bia trash, Cardi B can hold up a finger like she is teaching a class, Cardi B can wave imaginary bullets in the air, but Cardi B cannot make her own album pull the streams Bia is pulling. And streams, family, do not lie. Streams are the only critic in the industry that cannot be paid off. Sit with me on this. Now let me tell you what I think the next chapter looks like, cousins, because I have been watching this culture for a long, long time, and I recognize the shape of the storm before the storm arrives. Chapter 1 is Chris Blake dropping more receipts, and I expect those receipts to include text messages, voice notes, and possibly financial records. Chapter 2 is Maduka Okoye's baby mama going live, I mean actually live, on camera, in real time, and telling her story without a filter, without a lawyer, without a PR consultant. Chapter 3 is Cardi B breaking down publicly, either on a live stream or on tour, in a moment she will later try to walk back. Chapter 4 is the industry quietly beginning to distance itself from Cardi B, brand deals that suddenly go silent, features that suddenly get cancelled, magazine covers that suddenly get postponed. And Chapter 5, Family, is the reset, the 6-month disappearance, the wellness retreat, the tearful comeback interview, the softer image, the redemption arc. That is the playbook. That is always the playbook. And I am telling you tonight that we are about to watch it unfold in real time. Reportedly. Supposedly. Whispered on the wire. But before we get there, cousins, I need you to understand something about how these industry machines actually work, because there is a reason Nicki Minaj, of all people, is showing up in Cardi B's defense right now. And it is not friendship. Let me repeat that. It is not friendship. It is transactional survival. Because Nicki Minaj, in the current era, is fighting her own optics battle. Nicki Minaj is trying to rebuild her public standing after years of allegations and controversies swirling around her own inner circle. And an alliance with Cardi B, temporary though it may be, gives Nicki Minaj access to a younger, louder, more chaotic media cycle that keeps her name in the mouths of the culture. This is not a peace treaty, family. This is a mutual usage agreement. And the moment the usefulness runs out, the alliance is going to shatter louder than it formed. Mark my words. Drop your verdict below. I also want to address something Cardi B's most loyal defenders keep saying in the comments, and it is this: Cardi has been through so much, why are you attacking her? And I understand that instinct, cousins. I understand the impulse to protect a woman who has spoken openly about her hardships. But listen carefully, family. Being a survivor of your own past does not exempt you from being accountable for your present. Being underestimated at the start of your career does not authorize you to underestimate other women at the peak of theirs. Being publicly embarrassed by an ex does not license you to publicly embarrass the mother of somebody else's child. Accountability is not attack. Accountability is love with a spine. And every time we, as a culture, let a public figure hide behind their trauma to avoid their behavior, we hand them another season of the same pattern. I refuse to do that. Whispered on the wire. Now let me pivot back to the music for a second, because music is why any of us are watching any of this in the first place. Bia's ascent tells us something important about where the industry is heading. Doja Cat and Latto's chart movement tells us something else. And Cardi B's stagnation tells us the loudest story of all. The audience, meaning you, cousins, meaning the culture, meaning the streaming numbers, is no longer willing to reward volume over substance. The audience is no longer willing to award success to whoever screams the loudest. The audience wants craft. The audience wants receipts on the mic. The audience wants a full album that can stand up to a full album. And Cardi B, despite the machine behind her, has not delivered that in 7 years. Bia, despite the lack of a machine, has delivered that consistently. And the numbers, family, are casting the deciding vote. Reportedly. Let me also give a fair note to Latto here, because I do not want anyone to say I did not. Latto is talented. Latto has hits in her back catalog. Latto is a real rapper with real bars. But Latto is currently in what the industry calls a commercial cold season, and the only way out of a commercial cold season is either to make a hit so undeniable that the culture cannot ignore it, or to align with the right feature at the right moment. The Doja Cat collab was a smart move. Doja Cat is a certified hitmaker and a global brand, but the execution has to match the intent. If the record does not crack the Billboard Top 50, Latto's camp is going to have to sit down and rethink the entire single strategy heading into the next quarter. And I say that with love, cousins. Because I do want Latto to win. I want every woman in this genre to win. But wanting is not the same as pretending. Drop your verdict below. Do you think Latto's got another peak in her this year? Let me also, because we are being fair tonight, defend Cardi B on one narrow point. It is true, objectively true, that mainstream media has, in the past, protected Cardi B from certain conversations. It is also true that mainstream media has, in the past, buried certain stories about her past. And it is also true that a woman in the entertainment industry has to navigate a fundamentally hostile terrain in which every misstep is amplified and every triumph is questioned. I acknowledge all of that. But acknowledging the difficulty of the terrain does not excuse the choice to weaponize AI against another woman, does not excuse the choice to publicly ally with an alleged woman beater, and does not excuse the choice to lecture other people about who counts as a real victim. These are choices, family, and choices have consequences. Reportedly. Cousins, one more thing before I wrap this up, because I want to leave you with the biggest question of the night. If Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, two women who have spent years publicly warring, can now form a joint defense squad against another woman with a legitimate grievance, then the entire feud between them was never real. Let me repeat that. The entire feud between Nicki Minaj and Cardi B was never real. It was a marketing exercise. It was a media cycle. It was two women collecting checks off the same narrative while pretending to hate each other. And now that they have an actual shared enemy, they have quietly linked up in the shadows, and the culture is expected to pretend it did not notice. I noticed. And I hope you noticed too. Whispered on the wire. The last thing I want to leave you with tonight is a warning. Cardi B is not the only artist in this industry running plays like this. Nicki Minaj is not the only industry giant lending her platform to shady operations. There are entire rooms full of publicists, managers, label executives, and celebrity fixers whose entire job is to bury the truth. And every time a Chris Blake speaks, every time a Maduka Okoye baby mama speaks, every time a Bia quietly outperforms the loudest voice in the room, one more brick falls out of the wall. The wall is falling, family. The wall is falling in slow motion. And you and I have front row seats. Reportedly. Supposedly. Whispered on the wire. Now, before I let you go, cousins, let me ask you the 3 questions I want you to answer in the comments section, because I read every single one of them and I promise I do. Number 1, do you believe Chris Blake's version of the Stefon Diggs story, or do you believe Cardi B's? Number 2, do you think Maduka Okoye's baby mama is telling the truth, or do you think she is crashing out, as Nicki Minaj and Cardi B allegedly want you to believe? Number 3, do you think Cardi B ends this summer still standing, or do you think this is the crack that finally splits her career open? I want your honest answer to all 3, and I want it in the comments. Because tonight, cousins, is one of those nights where the culture is at a fork in the road, and the road we take depends on how loudly we speak. Sit with me on this. If you rocked with this family, please tap that like button so the algorithm knows to send this to more of our cousins across the internet. Subscribe if you haven't already, because tomorrow, and I mean tomorrow, we are jumping right back into the next chapter of this saga, and there is a chapter coming, believe me, there is a chapter coming that is going to make tonight's tea look like a warm-up. Share this video with the friend who has been telling you Cardi B was suspicious since day one, because they deserve to feel vindicated. And drop your verdict below. Because the whispers are getting louder, cousins. The wire is humming. And the culture is watching. See you on the next one, family. Reportedly. Supposedly. Whispered on the wire. Good night.